So the government's in pretty serious budget troubles, all of their own making. What would you cut to get the budget back into balance? Big ideas, big proposals. Jump in. Nothing's off limits, OK? Just go searching for Paul Murray Live. So today we found out from the Prime Minister, and oddly from the Prime Minister, normally bad news is shunted off to lesser ministers, but still, this is the new paradigm, which means apparently bad news comes from the Prime Minister's mouth, in this case, intentionally. Now, this is the Prime Minister who for the past 3 years has said that it was set in stone, that there was no doubt, that we were on track, we were definitely going to have a budget surplus. Well, we're not going to have a budget surplus. In fact, we're going to have a pretty significant budget deficit. And the number that is being thrown around today is $12.5 billion. But by the way, that's not $12.5 billion. That will be the federal budget deficit. That's $12.5 billion less in revenue that the government claims that it is going to receive. But before we start boo-hooing the government, in May, when they did their last budget, they thought that the country was going to grow by 11%. They thought the amount of money that would be coming into the front door would go up by 11%. Instead, it's only gone up by 7%. Yet still, despite making more money this year than last year, this government will find a way to put us into debt. Deep, serious, generational debt. Now, the Prime Minister wants to pretend nothing to really worry about, nothing to see here, but that's crap. This country, in terms of its government, has outspent what it has earned, even when it got 7% more this year than it did last year. It is extraordinary. And then what about the absolute patronising arrogance of the Prime Minister, who has wanted us to believe, set in stone for 3 years, no compromises. This was the line in the sand, that there will be a budget deficit. But she believes that things have changed, and they have changed so dramatically in the past 6 months that now serious things are going to have to take place. Well, Prime Minister, what has changed? Yes, there's been a slowdown in China, but the Australian dollar has been sky high for a long time. Now, I don't understand, and often Treasury will get this wrong, but how do you not see what those of us who are nowhere near running the Australian economy see? How does the best treasurer in the world not understand, hey, rather than hoping that the Australian dollar goes down, let's actually bet that it'll stay exactly where it is, and if fortunes come our way, then guess what? We'll have more money to spend. But no, this government trying to create a political wedge every weekend, coming up with a $1 billion announcement for this problem and that problem, throwing money into Gonski, throwing money endlessly at an NBN, keeps pushing on. This is despite the fact that they got 7% more than they expected at the last budget. And this was unbelievable. The Prime Minister was talking to a learned room of economic experts. And this is how the Prime Minister explained our current financial situation. Not as if she was talking to experts, not even as if she was talking towards adults. This is your Prime Minister, my Prime Minister, talking to us like we're kids in a classroom. Have a listen to this.
Imagine a wage earner, John, employed in the same job throughout the last 20 years. For a period in 2003 to 2007, every year his employer gave him a sizable bonus. Now, very late, John has been told he won't get those promised increases for the next few years, but his income will get back up after that to where he was promised it would be. What is John's rational reaction? To respond to this temporary loss of income by selling his home and car, dropping his private health insurance, replacing every second evening meal with 2-minute noodles? Well, of course not.
Dear God, that is our Prime Minister trying to explain to us the economic situation that her government has driven us into. Now, by the way, if we do want to continue on with this ridiculous metaphor about our economy being like John, you see, Prime Minister, this is why you don't know what you're talking about. Because if John was a real person, this is what John would do. John wouldn't go and get another credit card. John wouldn't be able to go and borrow more money. You see, if John's income was going down, a bank wouldn't lend him money. You see, and if John was a real person, this is what he would do. He probably would start not just pulling in his spending by a bit, but if his income goes down, guess what? He might have to sell one of the cars. He might have to sell the car. He might have to trade down into a different house. He may not go out for dinner every second night. It might only become a once-a-month thing. They no longer might be able to watch things like this. They might get rid of DVDs. You see, that's what real people do. But the John that this Prime Minister is talking about is apparently someone who can keep spending at exactly the same level despite how much money is actually coming in. This John is the John that is more like Julia Gillard. You see, this is the John who can just keep living life like this because Julia Gillard gets a pay rise every 6 months. This woman and many of the people around her have no idea what they are talking about. And to try to compare the Australian economy that they have driven over the cliff, that they have thrown up against the wall, to a bloke called John, a bloke who apparently was so stupid that when he was getting money for nothing, he wasn't paying off his credit card, he wasn't putting money in the bank. Fair income. What is wrong with these people? The best thing I can say about this ridiculous day in politics? Have a look at the election clock. 138 days to go. Make that 137. Tick, tick, tick.